Okay, it's really good to be back. Hope the weekend went nicely for all of you. And whether it was a nice weekend or a not so nice weekend, here we are. And the only moment that ever matters, the present moment. So let's make ourselves as comfortable as we could possibly be in this present moment. So you don't need a yoga posture, you don't need a meditation posture, just a posture where you notice your body troubling you a little bit less. Adjusting shoulders, giving the spine a bit of a stretch by stretching the top end upward, the tail end downward, giving you that few extra millimeters of height. A posture that seems to indicate awakeness, alertness, despite the eyes being closed. Very gradually, very gently moving above our thoughts. And a moment ago, I said I hoped all of you had a wonderful weekend. But we all know that it changes from moment to moment, doesn't it? Sometimes our environment corresponds to what we would define as a good moment, and sometimes it doesn't. But let's be aware of these judgments of good, of bad, and you can use it even during this practice. Some of you might have the most incredible meditation session ever. And some of you might have the worst meditation session ever. And both are equally beneficial. Because by lifting ourselves above our thought process, we can simply be aware of whether it is a good meditation or a bad meditation. Because it is really the awareness that truly matters in this practice. And we know that because life happens around us. The car sometimes needs to be serviced, it has punctures, the roof leaks, the boiler breaks down. Sometimes people don't behave the way we would like them to behave. And all of these have a similar effect on our mind, especially when we define them as unpleasant experiences, experiences we do not like. We will find our minds being stimulated sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. And so long as we are identified with the mind, it will take us on a roller coaster ride, which is why we have arrived in spaces such as this, so that we may simply gain a level of objectivity, separate ourselves from this thinking process, so that we may simply observe it. From where? It's a space every single one of us has tasted. It's a space of alignment into the present moment. Those moments in your life where you felt passion, enthusiasm, joy, stillness, peace, calm, usually arriving as glimpses. And very often, when the world around us corresponds with our idea as to what good is, and so when the outside corresponds to our belief of what good or desirable is, we allow these wonderful experiences to flow through us. But in this practice, through this practice, not necessarily just this hour that we have together, but this practice reminds us that all of these experiences come from a source that lies within and around us. Some teachers refer to it as consciousness, awareness, beingness, the witnessing self. And no matter how many words they attempt to use to describe this space, they always remind us there's a little proviso at the end that says words cannot describe it. They just give us tiny little glimpses into what it truly is. It's a space of kindness. Kindness which we are only beginning to experience because it is unlimited. Every time we believe we reach the limit of this kindness, we discover just that there is so much more, and our hearts grow. When I ring the bell, let's, for a brief moment, release all our judgments about this present moment. And by this, I simply mean those judgments as to what is good or bad, and simply allow this space of kindness to flow through us. And it can, if you're having difficulty allowing this space to flow through you right now, one of my teachers uses very simple words to describe what this feels like. It simply feels like appreciation. And you start with the simple things. Just we appreciate our bodies, which have allowed us, that have brought us to this practice, or practices such as this. Because obviously there is more right with our bodies than wrong that enables us to participate. Some of us might be sitting, some of us might be lying down. But the sense of hearing, even if we're using hearing aids, the ability to listen to the words which are simply there to guide us back into the present moment. And then there is the technology, the Wi-Fi, these computers, tablets, phones, again, technology that allows us to connect in this way, technology that is relatively new. You may wonder why we're beginning with appreciation. What does this have to do with meditation? What does this have to do with mindfulness? And for this, I remind myself of the conversation which I've spoken of many times in this practice, a conversation between one of our fellow students and one of my teachers, where the student asks her, "When can I stop meditating?" It was some sort of a contemplative order. When do I know when I no longer need meditation as a tool to tap into the present moment? When do I know that I have arrived in this space that you speak of and describe as kindness and love and wisdom? And the teacher said, it is when you appreciate everything that happens around you. You release the need to judge one thing as good and one thing as bad, but simply appreciate, enter into a space of appreciation, knowing that even that which we refer to as not so good, even that which we refer to as bad, is simply a stepping stone. And more often than not, when we look at our own lives, we can see bumps, we can see difficulties in our past, challenges. But have you noticed that it is these challenges that brought us into practices such as this? At least for most of us, at least that is how my I have arrived here. And so we appreciate. And sometimes we keep playing back those old stories, those challenges, what people did to us, what people said to us. And if we must, we are human after all. If we must play back these old stories, then we can incorporate it into our practice by simply asking, what could I have learned from that? How could I have somehow benefited from that thing which I have yet to forgive that person for? Did it did it play its role somehow in turning me into the person that I am today? And very often, more often than not, you will find that the person you are today is kinder, more compassionate, more understanding, less judging, and very often equipped with new skills which can help and support those around you who are only just going through those experiences. Last week, we spoke about a movie called Groundhog Day, which was all about a person, a character, making peace with their present moment. And until this character made peace with their present moment, all of the challenges, all of the disruptions kept repeating themselves, revisiting this character. And if we were to look at our own lives, where there is anger, where we fight against the past, those past experiences, where we find ourselves wanting revenge, discovering unblocked channels of energy that we hold on to, we will very often find similar experiences repeating themselves over and over again until we've somehow made peace. And a very good example of this is simply one of my favorite writers on this subject, Wayne Dyer. He speaks about how his father abandoned the family, which consisted of his mother and his two brothers. So there were three boys and a mother. And this was at the height of the Depression in the United States. There were no jobs, women couldn't work. And the father walked out after being quite abusive to his mother. And he speaks about how him and his brothers wound up in orphanages, and how he could never really understand how his father could have walked out on three little children and a woman at a time when she could not work. and he held on to the anger and hatred, the pain. And he describes in many of his books and talks of how his father died a homeless person in an unmarked grave somewhere with just a little, maybe a little name, but there were no records. And how synchronicities led him to the grave where he had planned on spitting on the grave, where he wanted to unleash his frustrations and his anger and his pain and his hatred. But when he reached the grave, somehow he forgave. He may, he somehow, you'll have to read his books to really understand what happened, but he made peace with his father, suddenly understanding and discovering that it was because of his upbringing and because of his experiences in the orphanages that he had learned to be self-reliant, that he had helped many other children, that he had brought smiles and wiped away the tears of his mother and his brothers. And he would not be the person he was if not for those experiences. And it was after this act of forgiveness, or rather this allowing of the energies to flow, to make peace with himself, that he began his writing career and almost immediately became financially independent, successful. And obviously, the very reason I'm speaking of him, because he's been a profound influence in my life through his writing. A man who wasn't ashamed to hide his weaknesses, which somehow empowered me to facilitate these practices with the clear knowledge that I haven't quite achieved the perfection that I desire, but simply making peace, an illustration of how making peace with the present moment allows for the closing of the old chapters and the beginning, new beginnings, the opening of a new chapter. You don't have to figure out right this minute what the purpose of every suffering you've ever had has been, but instead, with the ringing of the next bell, let us all simply open a new chapter in this practice. And if we could simply use a word such as surrender, surrendering the past, releasing the past, knowing, somehow just knowing in the knowledge that every experience somehow had a role to play, a part to play, which we may yet have discovered. We may not have discovered just yet, but will become clear in the coming days, in the coming weeks, in the coming months, or even years. Can you feel the page turning as the sorry, as the page turns. Initially, a blank page. And then the new chapter, recognizing also how that alarm you just heard, its effect on your mind. And that's what we refer to as how volatile the mind is. If you found yourself being disturbed or disrupted by that alarm, by that incoming phone call, which might have been very audible through my microphone, a reminder, a precious, precious reminder of our identification with the mind. An opportunity to once again rise above the mind and watch as it settles, as we enter into the very essence and core of this practice, which is turning every moment into the only moment, turning every moment into a new beginning, a new start, a fresh journey. And if you can see, it's almost like train tracks. Like train tracks, the whole past, like a rail, those tracks which seem to carry the train in the same direction, always in the same direction. But this new beginning, where new tracks are laid, where we enter into an undiscovered space, where we release all expectations. Because everything we could ever expect, all of the images, all of the rewards, all of the wealth, health, and relationships that we can ever imagine has simply been from past experiences and can sometimes limit what is truly possible. And as we release the past, we also open ourselves to a future beyond limitation, beyond boundaries. And now the tools, all of these previous words, just to put this practice into perspective so that we may better understand it. How this practice may serve us. Now the tools that will help us to tap into our present moment. If you can imagine each and every one of us here to be a leaf in a different part of a tree, and we can call it the tree of life. But each one of us, a leaf in a different part. One of us might be at the top, right-hand side. Another one of us in the middle part. Or one of us facing east. One of us facing west. Each one of us having a very unique and specific present moment. And that, in a way, is what our practice is like. Because we're all in different parts of the world, all experiencing, each and every one of us experiencing something very specific, something very unique, an experience that we somehow feed back into this tree to give it a more complete awareness, experience. This tree that not only experiences the sunrise, but the sunset, despite leaves being on polar opposites. And let us call this tree the present moment. This tree of life, let us call it the present moment. And let us feed back to this tree our unique experience so that we may feel more of who we truly are. A being beyond the tiny leaf, this tiny form that inhabits this room. Let's start from the bottom up, shall we? Those points of contact between our feet and the ground. Some of us might be on hard flooring. Some of us might be on carpets. Some of us might even be on mattresses or cushions. But feel the way in which the two surfaces support each other. And then those parts, those other parts underneath us that may be supported by cushions or chairs or sofas or mattresses. Feel the way in which the two surfaces press against each other, support each other, mold to the shape of each other. Each one of us on a different surface. Some surfaces harder, some softer. But the information, this awareness that is being fed back into the present moment, into the tree, enriches the experience of the tree. This tree of life. Its ability to now experience both sunrise and sunset. of what it's like to be pushed by the wind, what it's like to be pulled by the wind. Our precious, precious present moment. And this ringing of the bell is so that you can dissolve your form, so that you now see the value of experiencing the present moment, this sharing of the present moment with a part of you that is so much more vast, so much larger. And this dissolving of form, this dissolving of identification with mind and form, it also serves us. Because when we find our minds wandering away, back into conversations, work, or things we have to do, fears, anxieties, it becomes so much easier to bring yourself back because you have now become identified. You have shifted your identification from leaf to tree. No longer affected by the breeze and the winds and the storms. More anchored, more sure of yourself, more sure of your self, that you are the witnessing self who watches the leaf, who watches all of the leaves as they dance, as they sway. Sometimes brushing against each other, causing minor moments of friction, only to bounce back, no longer identified as those tiny leaves. Bring your attention to your breath now. And feel the way in which the breath interacts with your skin, specifically within and around the nose. Just look for little things. Turn this into a very simple exercise, one where you simply notice direction, the direction of the breath. One where you notice which nasal passage it is that you are breathing through. And you'll notice you're breathing from either the right or the left. Because for each and every one of this shifts in cycles, sometimes half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, you shift from one nasal passage to the next. I'm breathing through my right at this moment, my right nasal passage. And so you feel the breath as it enters and exits. It's the temperature of the breath, humidity levels. And now you want to feel yourself as the tree a little bit more. And so as the breath enters into your experience, visualize the breath as you would a light moving up your nostrils, up your nasal passage, down the windpipe, within the throat. And as it reaches the lungs, moving through all of those, I think they're called capillaries, where the blood extracts the oxygen and the air still making its way down into the stomach. And then lowering the center of gravity within your body so that it now moves lower and lower down through the lower stomach, down through the pelvic region, down even lower than your feet. Remembering that this tree has roots. This tree called life has roots that dig deep, deep into the crust of the earth. And this is an ancient tree. It is a tree that in fact has been here always. It has always been here. This present moment has always been here. Experience the present moment in all of its glory, in all of the sounds that you can hear, in the temperature that you feel through your clothing, through your exposed skin. That you can experience the fabric of clothing, of surfaces, both underneath and on you. Your clothing, the weight of your clothing. This breath, the next breath, allowing you to discover the roots of this tree that have been here for so long that they have become a part of the earth, inseparable, now impossible to distinguish. And so you, me, a part of this planet called Earth, this planet that sustains every single one of us. Not only the leaves on the tree, but every other form of vegetation, every other tree, every mountain, a part of it. Every body of water, from the oceans to the rivers to the streams, a part of this intrinsic and indivisible being who is who you are, the being that I am, the being that we are. feeling the well-being of this planet, the way in which it rotates, needing no mechanism, no external effort, in a state of pure being, just like our hearts that continue to beat without us needing to remember to wind it up or power it up. The heart that continues to beat, that has been beating since the day we were born, just like the planet, our lungs, our kidneys, our livers, our blood cells, our muscles, our bones, knowing exactly how to be in this state, this space of well-being. What do we need to do? Nothing. We just allow, appreciate, sit, breathe. But how do we allow? By tapping into the present moment. That's it. Because as we tap into the present moment, we release all of the previous chapters, no longer reliving the past, no longer going through the stress and the pain and the need for revenge and angers and frustrations. Just here, where everything is new, everything is light. Just here, where there is no need to fast forward and look into the later chapters. Well-being, a knowing that everything works out perfectly. Perfect health, perfect relationships, perfect finances, as we simply allow it all to surface, as we step out of the state of doing, of interfering, no longer guided by the winds and the storms, but in the knowing that knowing within the tree of its perfection, where it releases the leaves as autumn approaches. Where it feels the lightness of its branches through winter. Sustaining its nourishment. Being as it experiences the perfection of spring, where the new flowers, the new fruit, the new leaves begin to emerge. The abundance of summer. But in a state of knowing, appreciation, no longer attempting to hold on to, no longer judging one season as better than the other. Understanding, knowing what true well-being is. Moving beyond weather patterns, beyond seasons, beyond storms, into that experience of being the tree, which is not alone, which is a part of the earth underneath, which is a part of every other piece of plant life, organic life, every rock, every grain of sand, every drop of water, complete, whole, just sitting, breathing, experiencing your thoughts as you would the breeze that brushes through the branches of this knowing tree. If you notice your thoughts, if they disturb you, allow your body to sway. Allow these thoughts to move through your experience. No longer attempting to block the wind, fight against the storms or the clouds. Just knowing yourself to be this being of awareness and presence. A body that sustains a whole ecosystem of life, where there are nests, where the birds rest and feed their chicks and the squirrels play, and all manner of fruit and flower which sustain the bees and feed countless. We appreciate every single cell in our body, every single cell that makes up the various organs in our body, releasing an intention that in the present moment, that we bring this present moment with us from moment to moment and breath to breath. And as we ground ourselves in the present moment more consistently, that there be healing, balancing, kindness, harmony, stillness between the cells, within the cells, that there be smiles, that there be laughter, that there be relief, that there be ease. As we move through the remaining segments of our evening from moment to moment and breath to breath. And now the final bell, which will also symbolize the beginning, a new beginning, where we hopefully enter into this moment a little bit lighter, a little bit happier, a little bit more peaceful. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining in this evening's practice. Deeply appreciated. It's a pleasure. Hi, Anne. I hope the practice was